The first thing anyone noticed was the silence that fell around the table. The kind of silence that arrives when something sharp has been said without being spoken out loud. The restaurant had been alive with the low music of cutlery, soft laughter, and the tired rhythm of a long day ending, but that sound thinned to nothing as a well-dressed woman leaned back in her chair and ordered her food in a foreign language, her tone deliberate, her smile precise, her eyes fixed on the waiter as if daring him to understand. She did not know his name. She did not know his story. She only knew that power feels louder when you think no one else in the room can hear it. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of people who keep showing up even when life keeps taking things away, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because they remind us who we can be. The waiter stood there with his order pad held steady, though his wrist trembled just enough to betray the weight of the moment. His name was Daniel, and he had learned long ago how to keep his face calm even when something inside him folded in on itself. The restaurant uniform never quite fit him right, the sleeves always a little too short from too many washes, the collar permanently creased. He worked evenings because mornings belonged to his son, a 6-year-old boy with sleep-tangled hair and eyes that searched every room for reassurance. Daniel had not planned on being a single father, had not planned on learning how to braid shoelaces and soothe fevers and stretch a paycheck so thin it felt translucent. Life had arrived with loss first, then responsibility, and he had met both with quiet endurance. The woman ordering from the table had arrived in a tailored coat that probably cost more than Daniel earned in 2 months. Her hair was perfectly styled, her nails clean and sharp, her presence unmistakably confident. She spoke in a language that was not common in this part of the city, letting each word roll slowly, watching Daniel's eyes for the flicker of confusion she expected to see. To her, it was entertainment, a subtle performance of superiority, a reminder of who held the power in this small exchange. She assumed the waiter was only what he appeared to be, another struggling worker with limited education, someone whose role was to nod, smile, and retreat. Daniel absorbed the moment like he absorbed everything else, with practiced restraint. He had learned that reacting only made things heavier. He had learned to swallow humiliation the same way he swallowed exhaustion, because at the end of every shift there was a small apartment waiting, a boy who believed his father could fix anything, and a future that depended on Daniel staying employed. The order pad filled with careful notes, his pen steady now, and he nodded politely as he always did, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. What the woman did not see was the way Daniel's mind moved back through time as he stood there. Back to a different life, one that felt almost fictional now. Back to crowded lecture halls, borrowed textbooks, late nights translating dense material from one language to another. He had once studied linguistics, driven by a love of words and how they carried meaning across borders. He had been good at it, better than good, but dreams shrink when real life demands rent money and childcare. When his wife died suddenly, the degree stopped mattering. Survival replaced ambition, and the languages he once loved became something he folded away, like letters from an old life kept in a drawer you do not open too often. He walked away from the table and into the controlled chaos of the kitchen, where heat pressed in from all sides and orders flew by in clipped shorthand. His manager barely looked up, already overwhelmed, already stretched thin. Daniel moved with quiet efficiency, delivering plates, refilling glasses, collecting empty dishes with the careful balance of someone used to carrying too much at once. The woman watched him from her seat, expecting discomfort, expecting to have won something small and cruel. She felt satisfied in that hollow way people sometimes mistake for confidence. As the evening went on, something shifted. The restaurant filled, the energy returned, and Daniel continued working as if the moment had never happened. When he returned to the table to check on the order, his expression was calm, his posture respectful. And then, without raising his voice or changing his tone, he responded in the same foreign language she had used earlier, not to repeat the order, but to politely clarify a detail she had missed, adding a cultural note about the dish that only someone deeply familiar with the language would know. There was no flourish, no smugness, no attempt to embarrass her. It was simply accurate, fluent, and effortless. The table froze. The woman's smile faltered, just slightly, as realization washed over her. The power dynamic she thought she controlled dissolved in an instant. People at nearby tables glanced over, sensing the shift without fully understanding it. Daniel remained professional as he always was, and waited for her confirmation before moving on. The moment passed quickly for everyone else, absorbed back into the noise of the room, but for the woman, time stretched thin. Something inside her tightened, not with anger, but with an unexpected sting of shame. She had not anticipated being seen. She had not expected the person she dismissed to quietly reveal depths she had refused to imagine. As Daniel walked away, she sat with her discomfort, suddenly aware of how small her behavior had been. The confidence she wore so easily began to feel like a costume that no longer fit. She thought of the way he had stood there, not defensive, not aggressive, just present. She wondered, for the first time, what kind of life produced that kind of composure. Daniel finished his shift late, as he always did, feet aching, shoulders tight. The tip from the table surprised him, folded carefully beneath the receipt, generous enough to ease a week's worth of stress. He did not celebrate it. He simply nodded to himself and kept moving. At home, his son was asleep on the couch, waiting despite his best efforts to stay awake. Daniel lifted him gently, carried him to bed, and sat for a moment longer than usual, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. These were the moments that mattered, the quiet victories no one applauded. Days passed, and life continued in its familiar rhythm. Bills came. School lunches needed packing. The restaurant buzzed with new faces, new moments. Daniel did not expect anything more to come from that night, and he was content with that. But sometimes, life leaves a door slightly open when you are not looking. The woman returned a week later, alone this time, dressed more simply, her posture less rigid. She asked to sit in Daniel's section. There was no performance, no attempt to impress. She ordered normally, in the shared language of the room, and when Daniel came by, she looked at him with something like hesitation, then gratitude. She did not apologize outright, but her actions softened, her demeanor changed. She listened when he spoke. She treated him like a person, not a role. Before leaving, she asked about him, about his life, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel allowed himself to share small truths. Not the heavy ones, not the grief that still sat quietly in his chest, but enough to be real, enough to be human. She listened, truly listened, and something in her shifted again. Weeks later, a card arrived at the restaurant addressed to Daniel. Inside was a message about opportunity, about a nonprofit language program looking for instructors who understood not just grammar, but struggle, resilience, and empathy. The woman had connections, resources, a network built on the same privilege she had once used carelessly. This time, she was offering access instead of judgment. Daniel hesitated. Change always felt risky when stability was hard-won, but when he imagined his son watching him step into something new, something aligned with who he once was and who he still could be, he felt a quiet resolve settle in his chest. He accepted. The transition was not instant or easy. He kept his restaurant job at first, teaching classes in the mornings after dropping his son at school. The work was fulfilling in a way he had almost forgotten was possible. Students listened to him, respected him, learned from his lived experience as much as his knowledge. Slowly, the restaurant shifts became fewer, the classroom hours more consistent. For the first time in years, Daniel felt like his life was expanding instead of narrowing. Near the end of this story, before we reach its final moment, I want to ask you something personal. If this journey, this quiet turning of fate, has already touched something in you, leave a comment right now. Even a single word matters. It tells the world that stories like this still have a place. The last time Daniel worked a full shift at the restaurant, he stood in the same space where he had once felt so small and realized how far he had come without ever needing to prove anything. The woman did not return again, not because she was ashamed, but because her role in his life had been fulfilled. Some people arrive as lessons, others as bridges. She had been both. If this story moved you, if it reminded you to look twice at the people you pass every day, to choose humility over ego, kindness over cruelty, then please like this video, share it, and stay with this channel. Your engagement keeps these stories alive, and sometimes they are exactly what someone else needs to survive another day. Daniel tucked his son into bed that night, listening as the boy talked about school, about dreams that stretched endlessly forward. Daniel smiled, knowing that no language on earth was richer than the one spoken in small moments of love, resilience, and quiet dignity.